Hello, you're listening to the Leong-Form, the podcast where my brother and I, my brother Hossan, explore the big cultural shifts happening in the world, and we talk to different experts on our show and try to make sense of everything.
Yeah, because sometimes, right, everyday things that we interact with, the most mundane subjects that we talk about in our daily lives, we actually don't know anything about it or very little about it. So this is a show where we look for people who can explain things to us. And once again, like Stanley said, I'm Hossan.
And I'm Stanley.
We're brothers.
Yeah, this project actually is something that we have been talking about for quite a few years now. I believe it was last reported in the news in 2022.
Wow. Okay. At the time I come to your show, you interview me.
Yeah.
Because you were the interviewer. But now we're having fun interviewing other people, and this very important topic we're going to talk about today is something that wakes us up every morning. And to me, it's coffee. What about you?
Coffee, apart from a toddler who screams and cries, "Mommy, mommy, milk!" Coffee would be something that you'd be the first thing that you want to grab. And start off your day with. Many people, in fact, actually kickstart the day with coffee, right, with a cuppa, or sometimes after lunch. You just kind of go into this
After lunch, I don't dare.
mode. Some people just need it to jumpstart the afternoon. So Singaporeans, we are pretty synonymous with our kopi as well. So therefore, it shouldn't come as a surprise that many new cafes are dotting Singapore's coffee scape. And their menus quite sophisticated, if I can say. Some where you can even get to choose what beans you want, what brews you want.
Yeah, it gets a bit confusing, and I think it's great that we have someone here, and I think it's your friend as well. Jonathan's your friend.
Yeah, well, actually, I was more friends with his grandma.
Oh,
kind of.
That's very weird.
Grandma and grandpa.
That's strange. Okay.
But I kind of know his dad and mom too. So
Okay.
I guess I'm friends with 3 generations, if you like.
Okay.
So joining us in the studio now, we like to introduce Jonathan Teo. He opened Kyuukei Coffee in 2023, and their latest outlet, the second outlet, is at the Kada building over at Maxwell. Jonathan, welcome to the Leong-Form.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Jonathan, so 2 outlets.
Yeah.
Not easy, right?
No, it's not.
In a very short span of time, right?
And because there's so many cafes in Singapore, they abound everywhere. Tell us perhaps why coffee, and why did you decide to go all right, let's do this?
I think that we can start off with all the pull. I love coffee, have done so for about 10 to 12 years. My cousin opened a cafe in Brisbane, and that was sort of my first experience and first exposure to really good coffee. The prevailing thought was, I did not know that coffee could taste like this. And then it was subsequently a chasing after that same high. But of course, nostalgia and sentiment play a role in that. The other pull was I've always wanted to run businesses. You sort of charter your own path, and you have radical ownership of whatever comes out of it. The push was that I was in the corporate life for about 3 years and shot straight up. But that was sort of like 25 trips a year.
Oh.
So I think that became a bit too much. And all those things came together, and I decided, hey, I know how to brew coffee. I had been doing so for about 10 years at home. Why not? Let's try that out. Started as a coffee cart. Mid 2023 while I was still working, actually.
Okay.
Then opened the cafe, and now we have 2.
Right. Wow.
The allure of the bean. I mean,
beans,
that's a
yes.
very radical, career move that you made.
You
right?
bean
Corporate.
around. Oh dear.
It started the puns. So yeah, well done on that very brave move. But you talked about Australia and Brisbane and that cousin influence of yours. Had you not had a cousin, doing cafe business and brewing coffee in Australia, and having interacted with that cousin, would you have even thought about doing business with coffee?
I reckon so. I think it was going to happen one way or another. I think around the same time, one of the incumbents in Singapore that I was frequenting was Nylon Coffee. But I think it was really that spark moment that caused me to then venture out within Singapore and Australia again to seek out better coffee. I think at that point in time, I had a sort of rating system in my head with that visceral experience with my cousin being a 10. Then after that, everything was sort of like an 8.5.
Wow.
8.
Well, the standard
Goes down from there.
Cannot.
No, but for sure, I've definitely had some fantastic coffee in Singapore. I don't know. It's almost like a what if. I think
Yeah.
I would have still ended up in the industry just because hyperfixation, the addiction to caffeine, all of that would have come together at some point.
It's very interesting that you talk about the coffee that you fell in love with it and in Australia. Now, what now? So let's bring you back to Australia, because same, right? The Melbourne coffee, the coffee in Sydney, wherever.
Brisbane.
How come suddenly Australia became this coffee, mecca? Before that, I mean, everyone goes to Italy because the espresso was wonderful. And having said that, so strangely enough, France, to me, because when I studied there, the coffee isn't that great, even though it's just next to Italy. But Australia, suddenly, it's like a coffee mecca of the world, and then it's influenced Singapore. So why?
It really happened in a very interesting place, because I suppose we can walk through the 3 waves of coffee that have happened so far.
Okay.
First wave being the advent of instant coffee and vacuum sealing. So that meant that coffee could be shipped abroad from source to places where there was affluence and consumption. And I suppose at that point in time, the focus was on quantity and not quality. So there wasn't so much distinction between where coffees came from, what process they had been through, and really trying to make a consistent product as your Nescafe Golds are, your Nescafe or regular instant coffee is. The second wave would be sort of the adoption and importing of Italian culture. That's where Starbucks comes about.
Okay.
So they're firmly within the second wave. They've started to increase the quality versus quantity, but at the same time, there's still only so much you can do when trying to make a consistent product.
Right.
Like the way that I put it is when people say, "Oh, I want it roasted dark." What happens when you roast coffee dark is that you start to converge in terms of taste. They start to taste very similar to one another. Lastly, the third wave is more on ethical sourcing, direct sourcing. So then working with individual farms, caring more about the process that the coffee's been through. And we can maybe talk about that in a little bit. But some names that you might have seen on the coffee bag: natural process, honey process, wash process. So those are just different processing methods from the whole coffee cherry before it gets shipped out.
That's a lot. Right?
Yeah.
Then what about the kopi that you drink from the kopitiam?
That would be what? That would be Robusta.
Robusta
Beans.
And that's actually, interestingly enough, I think that Nanyang coffee, they use the Robusta bean, which is known to be quite grainy in taste. So like oats, they roast it really dark. They add a bunch of sugar and butter to add a caramel to the outside of the beans.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
They add butter. Ben said that from Seramban, his family, they used to add pineapple as well in the mix.
That's new.
Yeah, I was like, what do you mean pineapple flavor? But you don't really taste pineapple, so I don't know how it all works. So the difference between these beans, how many types of beans are there?
So off the top of my head, there is Liberica, there's Eugenioides, there is Robusta, there is and Arabica. Arabica is actually a hybrid between Robusta and the Eugenioides. Eugenioides are these tiny, cute little tiny little coffee beans. You would think they're like the size of green beans. And fortunately for us, they have hybridized with Robusta. And the curious thing hybridized with Robusta to make Arabica. The interesting about Arabica is that it's got double the genetic material, 44 chromosomes versus the Eugenioides, which has 22. And Robusta, which is 22.
See your eyes glazing over, like,
what
wow.
So
like
with
mutant,
all that extra genetic space,
Yeah.
you can have all that variation of flavor.
Okay. Oh, this is very interesting.
Yeah. But going back, John, to you talking about it being roasted with butter and all that, do you, as a coffee aficionado, consider that adulterating the original taste of the bean?
I feel that there is a space for a good Robusta. I think it's making the best with the product that you have. The good thing about Robusta is that it's very disease resistant and it can be grown at very low altitudes. The problem with the challenge that Arabica is going to face is that as the world starts heating up, coffee is going to need to be grown higher and higher in altitude. which means land becomes much scarcer. And then obviously it becomes more expensive.
Prices, yeah.
I see. So climate change obviously is going to affect coffee.
It has already.
It has already, right? As it has affected a lot of commodities, like wine, for example, champagne, for example. Okay, let's go back to, I think I'm interested in the fact that there are so many types and then you go into so many flavors of it. How does one really appreciate it? I mean, for a lot of us, it's quite utilitarian, right? You get up, you drink, you go. Maybe you want to let our listeners know, how does one breathe and smell the coffee?
So I suppose that depends on, well, obviously our experience is going to be shaped by preference. And of course, if you've grown up drinking kopi, you might be used to very robust, strong kind of flavors. And I think typical Asian palate, we don't like swan, like a slightly sour or acidic taste. I mean, like obviously sweet and sour fish, sweet and sour pork is like on our minds, but
but not in coffee, right?
Yeah. I suppose so there is an aversion to that. But I think if people are willing to give it a shot and not
Prejudge.
prejudge or sort of block yourself out from a certain experience. You can experience it and then dislike it at the end.
Right.
But you should still give it a shot. Because if I had refused that experience, I would not have broadened my vision to what else coffee could be, right? So I think then the next step would be going to your local coffee shop and looking at a bag. And usually you see these tasting notes. A lot of people have asked me when they see our tasting notes, it's like, is there really lychee in this coffee? Is there really oolong tea? Is it mixed together? Then I'm like, no. It's the tasting notes that we taste. And we sort of want to give people yardsticks on what they can expect out of a coffee. I'm not saying that it tastes exactly like oolong or exactly like peach. It might be the tea-like qualities of oolong in a coffee. It might be the sweetness like peach or sweetness like plums.
But does that then influence the taster? Because you tell them what it tastes like already.
So I'm trying to find it.
So you can definitely go and blind taste the coffee and then refer to the bag. Obviously, our taste, our sensory is going to be slightly different from each other, and this came up in conversation for coffee competitions. You need to know what tastes or products your judges have been exposed to. It doesn't matter. For example, I think the example that James Hoffman, who's the World Barista Champion 2007 from the UK, he was saying that he used black currants a lot in his routine as a tasting note for the judges. And a lot of the judges didn't know what black currants were. So it was interesting that...
Ribena?
Yeah, exactly. You know, but for someone who has not been exposed to that taste or that specific fruit, it means nothing to them.
No,
right?
absolutely.
So then I would encourage people to then, what does it taste like to you? And then look at it from individual components. Is the sweetness intense? How intense is it? Is the acidity intense? What does it remind you of in terms of like fruit? Because there are some defects in coffee that might taste like acetic acid, which is like vinegar. Good ones would be malic, which is the kind that you have in apples, citric, which is in your citrus, and the list goes on from there.
Wow, very interesting. All right. You talked about also how prices of coffee is going up. So maybe we should start brewing our own coffee at home rather than go out too much. Of course, that's of course not to say that we shouldn't be patronizing cafes like yours on days that we really feel lazy or if it's really convenient down our office, tower and stuff like that. But let's talk about people brewing coffee at home. Do you see increasingly more people, your friends included, family, buying machines, buying equipment and really, investing in that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have asked me sort of advice on buying an espresso machine. Although the next thing that I tell them is, do you really want a new hobby?
Is it a hobby or is it necessity though?
So the thing about espresso is that because you're grinding coffee quite fine and coffee is different from each other. In fact, day to day, we are still adjusting our grind sizes at the cafes. It may be a bit too finicky for you to get a good cup of coffee. I mean, for me, I enjoy the process of dialing a coffee in and then making adjustments day to day. But if somebody really just wants a coffee, you want something that's got a bit more wiggle room or margin margin of error essentially. So maybe an espresso machine doesn't need to be in every household. I would probably push them towards maybe like a filter coffee setup, which is also way more inexpensive.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I used to have a filter coffee. That's not a percolator, right? That's a different one.
A percolator would be sort of, I mean, like you can get one of those automatic drip machines.
Yeah.
Those do a decent job.
Okay.
But if you wanted to do both the sort of therapeutic brewing process, that's very available.
Wake up at 5 a.m. just to do that, you know?
Yeah. Or all those automatic machines are fantastic as well.
Yeah. But the for me, and that's just my personal taste, I find it too dilute, too watery, because it's just, and when I look at it, right, so the color looks really wrong.
Oh, we call that long kang zui.
No. Yeah, and I get that in America.
Oh yeah, a lot of that.
You know, and I go like, how can people drink this? Is that why they sit in the diner and drink cups and cups of coffee because it doesn't work? Things like that. So, is it a preference thing? Is it a taste thing or cultural thing, as opposed to what you do, which is like amazing? The texture of it. So how does it all compare? That one prefers this kind of coffee to the other.
Yeah, so I think since you mentioned the diner coffee, I think another place that you could get that kind of coffee would be McDonald's. You know, with the heated carafes. Heated carafes.
Yeah.
So they are brewing one batch and keeping it throughout the day, or refilling only when it's emptied.
Right.
Whereas, there's no good way to reheat coffee.
Okay.
As you heat it again, you are losing volatile compounds. That's why it loses its strength.
Okay.
Second would be the quality of the beans that you use and the quality of water that you use.
Quality of water.
Because
like
if
filtered water and stuff like that.
So if water is 97% of what you're drinking, the quality of water makes a huge difference in how you taste. Things like the level of certain minerals also impact how you taste. I've done this with my staff at our new shop because Maxwell is Kada is quite an old building, right?
Yeah.
It's a 100-year-old hospital. And I've got a tap where if I push forward, it gives us tap water, from the pipes.
Yep.
And then to the left towards us is filtered water.
Filtered
and I've
water.
given it to my staff like, hey, which is which? And they can instantly tell which is better of the filtered water. Because the filter that we're using is a BWT. It adds magnesium or removes calcium. Removes calcium, adds magnesium. And what that does is it adds quite a bit of sweetness to the water. So even then you can tell a difference.
Wow.
Okay.
Didn't think about that.
Yeah, I'm going to get a new filter
It's
in my
so
home.
scientific now.
Yeah, it becomes like this whole experiment, right?
So that kind of leads on to the fourth wave of coffee. We've talked about
it is
third
a
wave,
fourth
where it's coming, or rather people haven't defined it what it is yet.
Jonathan defines it first.
I don't know whether I'm qualified for that, but I think the fourth wave of coffee is going to look a lot more into experimental processes. It's already happening. I'll give you an example. For sake, you use koji and yeast, and a lot of boutique sake houses would use the yeast culture that they have in their koji houses, in their koji rooms. So it's not purchased yeast. So a lot of farms are then doing inoculations of yeast or microbes that are specific to that farm. So in a way you are...
It's like doing sourdough from the mother load.
Essentially, you are doing an extra step of fermentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. So those are coming on the market.
Wow.
Other ones are, like you mentioned, pineapple and the roasting. They're doing it in the processing. So adding fruit and macerating that together for co-ferment. It's sort of contentious within the coffee circles, but I think it's the same as what they're doing with Robusta, right? They're making the best they're making the best product that they can with the produce that they have. And then I think also, who knows what the fourth wave will bring. We just talked about that.
Yeah, because a lot of it is also marketing, right? You want to get your coffee out there. When I fly Singapore Airlines, and then they always go, you look at the menu and they go, besides the normal coffee they serve, but they go, nah, can I have the Colombian, the Ethiopian, the Guatemalan, the whatever, right? Is this all just marketing, or is it true that these coffees are different?
It's so true that they are very different because each of the lands that they are grown in have a different soil, different soils, different minerals, different climates. Plants. So the coffee that I'm going to brew for you later is from Panama.
Wow.
It's a geisha. So the geisha varietal originated in Ethiopia, was taken across the Atlantic to Central America. So you've got geisha from Geisha Village in Ethiopia that tastes very much like an Ethiopian coffee. So citrus, a little bit of berries. Once it's gone over to places like Guatemala, Panama, you get a lot of different flavors. The Panama is probably the broadest in terms of what the taste profiles that have come out of it. You get a lot of orange blossom. Some of them are like lychee, some like peach. I've got a coffee on my bar right now that's like rose and lychee.
Okay, we're going after this.
Great time for like Valentine's Day kind of.
Yeah, why not, right? Yeah, darling, here's some rose and lychee coffee. Can't afford to buy your rose. But that's really interesting because to think that Panama, you say, has the widest range of varietal tastes. And I never had Panamanian coffee. Whatever, how you say it. You should know.
No, I never been to Panama.
All right, so before we go into the actual brewing, your listeners and those who are watching on YouTube, we're actually going to be demonstrating how real coffee. Can I say real coffee is made as opposed to pour hot water and stir? We're going to do that in just a while. But final question before we go into the actual demonstration. Okay. This is going to be also quite contentious. I have an Nespresso machine, okay? Now, what I do every morning, I just press my shot, right? The espresso. And then I do it twice because I don't want to waste my capsule. Does that work or do I have to replace the capsule for a second shot?
I would probably recommend that you add a second capsule.
Because?
So I've done this experiment with my staff as well.
Yeah.
We take an espresso puck and then we do an experiment twice with the same coffee, same dose. First shot, we pull to 90 mils of water. So my machine is able to dose exactly 90 milliliters of water, or to the gram of water that I want it to.
Wow, okay.
Then we do another experiment where I pull 120 mils of water. So an extra 30 mils go through that coffee. And what we find is you get a little bit more sweetness, but way more harsh, bitter compounds. So because you've already extracted all the good stuff out of that coffee,
the first drive
any more water that goes, any more fresh water going through that coffee is going to start to extract the undesirables. So it is a balance point. Even within the cafe, we are sort of tweaking our ratios every day. Some coffees are better ground finer and done as espresso. Others are better ground coarser and pulled as a lungo. It's just a matter about where extraction is efficient and effective.
So that's different from adding hot water into it and becomes an Americano.
It is very different from making an Americano.
Okay.
So instead, you could add a little less water to make it your Americano in the morning.
Right.
Because it's about relative strength, right?
Yeah, okay.
If you don't want to go and pop another capsule in, maybe make your drink a little shorter.
So do like a ristretto and
You can still do the espresso, but instead of pulling the water through the capsule, just add a bit of hot water.
Okay.
And a little less of it.
So it's really the whole ratio of it.
Exactly. So even in the cafe, like we go from as low as 1-to-1 coffee to milk up to 1-to-5. So then that gives you your different drinks. Cortados are 1-to-1. Flat white is about 1-to-3. At our cafe at least. And then a latte is like 1-to-5, 1-to-6.
Okay, wow. So, okay, all this shall be made known to us in a little while. So we are going to have it right here. Jonathan's going to brew us coffee, and we're going to see how it's going to be made. So that's what we're going to do right now.
And here on the Leong-Form, we do magic. Voila! All right. Jonathan Teo with us, and he has brought quite a bit of items.
Barang all over the table.
Barang, yeah. They look, some of them look confusing to me. I have no idea what they do.
Don't let
but
your son go and play with it.
is that a black pepper?
The grinder.
No.
All right, Jonathan, why don't you just tell us what's going on here?
Yeah, so I have a simple setup consisting of a hand grinder, a dripper. So you can use a dripper of your choice. This one's called a clever dripper. It uses this slotted Melita filter. And what it does is it's like a tea strainer. So you pop it on the cup and water comes out.
Oh.
So that means
it's like a
you can,
Vietnamese coffee thing.
kind
Right,
of,
kind of, right?
kind of,
They
kind
put
of.
that. Okay.
Yes. So the good thing about the clever dripper is that it's sort of like steep coffee like tea. So this method of extraction, I call it, it's immersion rather than percolation. Percolation is fresh water through the same grounds of coffee. This one is steeping grounds in water. So it's very much just about diffusion from the beans to the water. And I'm going to brew some coffee.
Okay.
So we start off with a dose of coffee.
Right, you brought your
I brought some
weighing machine.
lovely, I've brought my scale.
Scale, you call it a scale, not a weighing machine.
Yeah, it's same. So you have to weigh the coffee beans, is it, or the whatever you've ground?
So weighing matters when you want to know like the ratio of coffee to water.
Okay.
So that you can sort of build relative strength like we were talking about just now. So I'm going to do a brew of, I think I've got enough for, what are we doing? We got about 400 mils of water.
Okay.
I could probably do a brew of, let's do 20 grams, 22.
Okay.
22 grams of coffee. And you can smell, I'll let you smell the coffee before I grind it.
Wake up and smell the coffee.
How about this? I won't
Wow.
tell you the tasting notes of this coffee.
Okay, don't. Let's have fun with
But
this.
what I can tell you is that this coffee is called Panama Lost Origin.
So I smell first,
We'll go through. It's from this place called Yaramilo Estates, and it's a wash coffee. So then it's gone through the process of knocking the seed out, completely removing all the fruit matter, and then drying it on raised beds. It was grown at 1,670 meters above sea level, and the producer is Nadea Guerrera. So
Well, you know that means nothing to us, right?
I know, no, but as in I'm just saying that in the third wave of coffee, it matters a lot where the coffee comes
I
from
see. Okay.
and the relationship with the farmers.
Okay, fair enough.
So,
Reach out and take a look at this.
but the tasting notes are there, so
Yeah, don't
avert your gaze.
You cannot read the tasting notes.
Yeah.
You're supposed to blind taste. Anyway, you can't read. Like, you didn't
I
bring
can't
reading
read. I
glasses.
didn't bring my reading glasses.
So the way that the grinder works is that I can adjust the grind size, and you'll see this burr move in and out. So then that also adjusts how coarse the coffee is ground.
Okay, so for listeners, what's happening is it looks like a pepper, basically like a pepper grinder, it's a
Yeah.
hand grinder, and John said you can always decide how coarse or how fine you want to grind. So, and it looks, there you go, grinding the beans. Well, it's very ASMR. ASMR, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is this the first time you've had sound effects on the Leong-Form?
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens because we have a lot of episodes coming up where we have lots of
other
exciting
sound
things to
effects,
do. Yeah.
So how long do you have to grind it for? I mean, do you know when it's to the level of what you want?
Oh no, so it's only grinding the whole beans into the
Grounds,
So that's
okay.
actually
Powder.
done.
Okay, when
this
it stops making noise.
Exactly,
Oh my
because all the
gosh.
beans go through the burrs.
Ah,
So then I can just pop that out, and you guys can smell this again.
okay.
like.
Let's see.
Do you smell lychee?
We are don't cloud my smell nose, please. My smell nose.
Smell
And what
nose.
I'm doing next is calculating.
smell
I
it.
put 22.2 grams,
It's amazing. It's okay.
17 ratio.
No,
so we're
let's,
gonna look for
I'm gonna
3.
write down my taste. Well, I think it's tasting. My tasting. So look, so the kettle has been boiled. How many degrees? How did you know it was ready?
So I went straight to boiling just because I knew it was going to be off the hob for a little while. The impact of temperature on how a coffee tastes is lower temps usually lead to a bit more sweetness. Hotter water gives you a bit more expression of the coffee.
So you poured hot water into the filter and now you just poured the grounds in as well.
Ideally, I would have loved to have a spoon, but I'm going to try.
Jose can
and-
lend you his finger.
No, it's
It's gonna be hot.
Oh, okay. All right.
We'll
And then I'm going to
spoon.
start a timer as well.
Oh.
I'll try and spread the grounds as much as I can.
All right, we might be able to bring in a
We'll,
spoon
we'll
soon.
grab some. Yeah, don't worry.
Don't burn your finger.
But it's not 100 degrees anymore.
Still, I still see steam coming out.
So it looks interesting because I've never seen anyone do that before. Normally, like you say, it's always water going into through the grounds. And this is what's happening is the water's there, you poured the grounds in and now
And you said diffusion.
it's
didn't you?
brewing.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it really is like steeping tea.
Yeah.
This method of brewing is also used in cupping, and cupping is sort of a format where you grind the same, like different coffees to the same sort of a similar protocol.
Okay.
And then you compare and sip coffees.
Yeah.
Just
Let's
one
have a
will do.
spoon.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you so
Right.
much.
Thanks, Jam. We've got a
Spoon is in the house.
So what I'm doing is breaking up all the clumps. Just
Yeah.
make sure all the coffee is.
Sink to the bottom.
Yep.
And
And then
how
we'll
long
leave
do you
that.
have to steep it in?
So this
for?
is going to be steeped for 2 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Although with the temperature drop from
Drops.
just now, I might leave it a little longer.
Then if that happens, because sometimes I go to a cafe and I order a coffee and I always hear them going, I want an extra strong flat white hot, as opposed to what? As opposed to not so hot.
So yeah, some people want their drink like very, very hot. Mainly because they want to. Oh, I shut the time off. They just want to have it warm for longer.
Okay.
But I think we try not. I mean, we'll oblige as much as possible. But there is a point where milk starts to denature. Like all the proteins start unwinding because it's reached too hot of a temperature. And that happens around like 65, 70 degrees Celsius. So I think normally what I'd say is we'll do it as hot as we can, or just because like if you've ever had like a very chalky taste in coffee, that's usually because the milk was either re-steamed or
that's not very good.
or was steamed a bit too hot.
So then there's this film on top of it as well that starts to form on the milk.
That happens when you cook it, yeah. Yeah. When you make like ricotta and you like heat the milk for too long, or your bechamel. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna release all the coffee into my tumbler.
Oh, so once you... Oh, wow.
So really like a tea
It is.
server.
Okay, if listeners, you're hearing that, we are not in a toilet. Okay. Just saying. That's interesting. That's an interesting device. My goodness.
You can smell the aroma already.
Yeah, it's. So my first top note that I would say would have been it was quite honey-like, a bit malty when I smelt it twice actually
Yeah.
from the unground
Yeah.
into the when you ground it. So that hit me.
Honey-like sweetness, definitely. I would agree with you on the aroma side.
I thought hazelnut came through for me. I don't know.
Maybe it'll be clearer when we
taste
drink
it.
and
Okay.
Mhm.
I mean,
Once
that's
that is almost done.
Wow, so this would be like the
And do you know-
freshest brew you can make for yourself and bring it to the office in your tumbler.
So yeah, exactly. This setup would be great for someone that just wants to set and forget. I mean, even if you wanted to sort of compromise and grind your coffee at home, keep it in a container, and then
Airtight
brew it
lah.
at the office. That's
Then
totally.
do you have to keep it in the fridge or a freezer or something like that, or just leave it in the cupboard?
beans?
Yeah, I mean, you grind it, pre-grind it.
Pre-ground.
You can. So the thing about coffee is once it's ground, obviously you're starting to lose
Oxidizes.
volatile compounds from the get-go. No problem.
Wow. So I'm looking at it. It looks,
It looks like very Gao Chinese tea.
yeah, the color is very Chinese tea actually, which I'm not used to because like I said, when I drink the coffee, I like it to look nice and,
Yes,
and
dark,
rich and,
yeah.
and oomph, right? Okay. And so what, do I do it like wine?
You can.
Do you swirl it?
I usually do that myself. Like just sort of have it between my palate and tongue.
Okay, quite interesting. It has a bit of a tea-like quality to it. A bit sour. It's a bit of a sourness to it. But the acidity isn't that much. When you taste something sour, your brain goes, acid, but doesn't come across like that. What about you, Stan?
I don't taste the sourness as much as the bitterness, but I guess all coffees are bitter in some.
I wouldn't describe it.
Would you describe it as bitter? No.
I wouldn't describe it as bitter.
Unless it's gone bad.
Coffee
bitter like
burnt,
bitter
right?
gourd. Bitter like bitter gourd? I don't think so. There is a florality as it's starting to cool a little bit.
What's that? That thing, that flavor, it's slipping my mind now. The sourness of that comes through, but
So there is a sweetness, I would say, almost like a very delicate stone fruit. It's where I can tell you it's tasting is like just past the tip of my tongue, and then roughly the hard palate-ish.
yeah, interesting.
Almost like peach between the palate and the tongue. When you have like a white peach and you sort of draws a bit of saliva from you.
Because of the tanginess. The tanginess, that's right. Oh, wow.
Maybe my tongue isn't as sensitive.
You need to be trained
Yeah.
in everything.
I'm a noob
Wine
in
la,
this.
coffee la, tea la.
We'll have a lot of those episodes coming up.
So what I smelt earlier before you brewed the coffee, kind of like, how would I put it?
Malt, you said.
The
I think
malt,
it was.
yeah, the maltiness of it. Somehow now the malt doesn't come through when it's liquid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might have been the chaff that you were smelling. So like coffee still has sort of like a layer of paperiness that's still in the... And it'd be interesting to then go and smell the...
I know what.
Can we call it the cha or the pulp?
I know what it is now. It's the ham choi ngap tong.
What? Salted duck.
Yes,
Salted preserved vegetable duck
It's
soup.
the ham choi. It's the what would you call it?
Preserved
The
vegetables.
mustard, right? Mustard leaf. The salted mustard leaf. No. Sorry. Did I just compare your coffee to ham choi ngap tong?
Which we like anyway.
No, but that's it.
Yeah, a little bit.
Right?
A little bit.
No, God. Okay, sorry, but let me.
But this is probably the strangest comparison you've ever had with taste.
Hossan now says this coffee tastes like salted duck soup.
Ham choi ap tong.
Ham choi ngap tong. Itek tim for the
Itek tim.
Itek tim for the
Okay, yes.
Peranakans.
Okay, I now know what you're talking about.
Now we could pair this very well with this.
Right?
No, so I've seen hotels start to pair coffees with dishes. Instead of a wine pairing, you can have a non-alcoholic coffee.
Okay.
It's a great idea.
But you get it, right? This is this.
Yeah.
That's right at the end. There's very familiar, but I can't play. Now I can place it.
Hey, but talking about pairings as well, isn't that something that you do at your cafe?
Yeah, so coffee omakase is what we did.
Wow.
We have been doing to sort of try ground coffee in context with the dessert and then compare coffees with one another. We sort of do a 2-course coffee omakase.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, that's unique.
Oh, I think I just blow my mind now that I recognize the taste of it.
So now that you've also tasted the coffee and sort of have like a bit of lingering aftertaste, I want you to close your mouth, breathe out through your nose, and all of those aftertastes will sort of roll around in your palate area. Mouth closed, but like mouth cavity wide. As you breathe out through your nose, all the sort of volatiles will still move around in your mouth, and then you'll sort of like re-smell.
Maybe I shouldn't have had a mint before. This morning, I mean.
No. I think for me, like I take a mint in the car, and then when I get to the cafe,
So
my
it's
sensory is
alright.
like shot.
Yeah.
But maybe about like 10 minutes later, it's good.
It's okay.
Yeah. So the tasting notes on this coffee are,
Okay. Go.
you mentioned tea.
Tea like.
So jasmine and Earl Grey are two of the tasting notes.
Okay.
Citrus like bergamot, and then that white peach that I was telling you
Yes.
about, like that sweetness like a stone fruit.
So no hazelnut.
Definitely no sour plum. Assam.
I kind of get it though, like the hazelnut right at the start, like yeah. And then the aftertaste are all that floral tea-like qualities.
Which is so that's just my thing, right? When now that you've explained it and I've seen the process, I appreciate this coffee. But if you were to serve me this coffee or randomly in some wherever, cafe, I'll go like, why is it so watery, dilute, and not understand it? So for a lot of listeners today listening to this and wondering how to get this, and is there where does one go and buy these things?
Yeah, so if you go to a cafe, I suppose if you wanted to drink something like this, you could try and find a place that does filter coffee. Is
Okay.
the broad term, or another word would be pour over. In Australia, I think like if you got filter coffee, it's only batch brew that they'd serve you.
Right.
Some places do pour over, which is hand poured coffee. That is the predominant mode of filter coffee in Singapore. Obviously, different places have different coffees and use like different equipment, different drippers. But that's where I'd start. I think the difference between espresso and a filter coffee is espresso is intense and meant to be very like an amplification of sorts, but the band is quite narrow for what you can taste. Filter coffee or immersion would be a lot more broad, kind of like listening to a concert. Something we talk about in like the hi-fi space, sound stage, how you're able to hear each instrument separately. That's the way I describe the difference between filter coffee and espresso.
Is there a set rule that people say, especially the Europeans, the Italians go, in the morning you can only drink the espresso, and then after that when do you drink the cappuccino, and then etc. etc. What are your thoughts on those rules
In Singapore.
in general?
Personally, I don't really drink milk coffees that much. I drink it mostly for taste. People should just drink what they want.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
it is quite a thing, in Europe.
Yeah,
It is a thing, and they look at you like, oh, you Neanderthal,
heathen.
you heathen, you pleb. How dare you order a cappuccino now? You know what time it is, blah blah blah. So because Stanley, I will be heading to Europe sometime this year. So
Oh dear.
yes, so please learn.
I shall.
Don't get a cup thrown at our heads.
I shall. And one final thing, John, before we let you go to the real brewing happening at your two outlets. If we're going to be storing these beans, whether ground or not yet grounded, what sort of conditions should it be stored in? In a freezer and not in a freezer, just in a cool cupboard space?
So I think let's start off with the coffee beans shelf life. If you're brewing for espresso, you have a fairly narrow window between the second week of post roast to week 6 post roast. So you have a month-long window to drink your coffee.
Even though it's vacuum packed. No.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Vacuum pack sort of like extends it a little bit, but chemistry is still happening.
Jeez.
So the best thing that you can do for your coffee once you reach that 2-week period, if you're not going to drink it within the 6 weeks, throw it in the freezer. Because low temp slows chemistry down.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the word that we can use that's colloquial would be lao hong. Your coffee goes lao hong after 6
yeah.
weeks.
And you can taste it, right? I suppose.
Yeah, so rather like your beans become so porous that water just runs through them, and you end up with under extracted
Drain coffee.
sour coffee.
Longgang zui. Okay, because in Singapore we're also used to drinking all these Asian coffees, right? That's mixed with condensed milk,
Yummy.
evaporated
I love
milk.
those
Really?
coffees too, yeah.
But won't that completely just destroy the taste of coffee then? Have we become coffee snobs now?
I think I have an appetite for both. I still go for my instant coffee. I just bought a packet yesterday from a home brand. And I still go out to
instant?
cafes, like like Jonathan's. And yeah, I think we have an appetite for coffee.
I cannot, now I
Every
cannot drink instant coffee anymore.
Guess who the snob is?
No, really. It's just because we grew up on that wake up, make up. And then now I'm looking at it and sometimes in hotels, for example, you have no choice. You wake up, you need a coffee.
Yeah.
And you open that packet and you're like, I'm dying, kill me now. So I don't know what to say. I mean, everybody has your own taste, I guess,
Yeah,
right?
to each his own.
Yeah, so thank you, John. It's been a wonderful experience and you've really opened my eyes up to this world of coffee because I would never, ever, if I go into a cafe, order something like what you've just served us. Because I'm not used to it. And like I said, open our horizons, our eyes to coffee.
Yep, that's right. And if you want to open your horizons even broader, you'll find a Kyuukei Coffee, cafe rather. They're at Alexandra, and their most recently opened outlet would be at the Kada building over at Maxwell. I think it's just the building behind Maxwell Food Center, if I'm not wrong.
That's where it is.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's where it is on the
Kada,
ground floor, and it's an old hospital that's been redone up.
Okay.
And you can also check them out on Instagram, but I better spell it out for you. So Kyuukei Coffee is spelled Kyuukei Coffee, right? So that's double U's there. Kyuukei Coffee. All right.
Where'd you get the name from, by the way?
Kyuukei means a break in Japanese.
Kyuukei is a break.
Yeah. Or to relax.
Nice. Like lepa. But in Japanese.
All right, so follow them on Instagram at Kyuukei Coffee and also their website, kyuukeicoffee.com. You can also order beans from them, get them to help take care of your events as well. Jonathan did mention about their coffee carts as well that they bring out for events as well.
Nice. All right, on that note, which is floral. Thank you once again, Jonathan, and we'll see you soon on the Leong-Form with Stanley and Hossan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.